So hello there, viewers on the internet, and welcome to another broadcast of Hömppäkanava. Today we'll be doing something a bit different. As you know, I've been doing mostly Let's Plays on this channel, mostly retro games and that kind of stuff, and mostly in Finnish. But today I think we'll be starting a new show here called Devaus Helvetti, which translates to Development Hell. And that's because I also have another game-related hobby, not just playing them, but also amateurishly trying to develop some games. And I'm not that good at the process. Typically I get excited about something, I think I can do it, and then I hit a technical problem and I lose interest after that. And then the project just disappears for years or forever. But I thought instead of doing that, maybe I could showcase some of my work, and that way it doesn't get lost forever, and also maybe I might get some help from the internet in how to beat these technical problems, which is why I'm using English in this broadcast, because that is the lingua franca of game development. So anyway, my project for the past week has been a role-playing game, and it's being made in RPG Maker, the MV version, the not quite the latest version, I guess, but one of the more modern ones. It has some powerful features and stuff like that, but the basic game you can make with it is quite limited. Typically it has these childlike graphics and like very limited mechanics of the JRPG type. I mean, you can do a game with it, but if you want to like edit how it works, then that becomes a problem, because like all the mechanics are pretty much set in stone. But I'm not that much of a fan of the typical JRPG. It's just not something I grew up with. What I did grow up with was the more Western RPGs, especially Fallout 2 was the game that really sparked my love for the RPG genre. And of course, a big dream of mine has been to like replicate that experience and maybe make a game of such caliber on my own. So I decided to give a shot as to how it might work here with RPG Maker. So here you have a world map of the post-nuclear California, where Fallout is set, obviously. Now I can't even remember where I got this picture from. Yeah, I think it's actually a satellite picture from NASA. I used it as the world map. Now we can put this fog of war here or something to mark that this isn't explored yet, and then we can go and hit play test and see how it looks like so far. So the game starts here at the world map, which is used to explore the post-nuclear wasteland, and there you see some debug messages. I got some rudimentary like random encounters going on here. They actually don't do anything yet, it's just a mechanic that displays do you wish to encounter, but yeah, let's leave it at that. Once the player stops moving, you get this cursor, and that means you can enter whatever like region is there. No, I don't want to encounter anyone. Now I have only done the shoreline yet, so now despite the indicator it's actually nighttime, which is why this map is so dark. I might have to change that later, but it actually has like a day and night cycle kind of thing where the screen becomes basically tinted. When it's night it's blue. So here I think this should be a coastal tile, so if we click there yeah, we enter a map, and you're at the ocean shore, and this is basically what it looks like right now. The game, like we have a functioning log there, although I've repurposed some of the lines to use as the mouse cursor indicators, but like the log, the black-green text log thing works, which is nice. And we're using a plugin called MV3D, which translates the basic 2D view of the game into a three-dimensional one, which is cool. I have like one sprite here, and we have the shoreline here. Let's pretend this is the mighty ocean here. So, but anyway, what's cool about this is that, well, you have the shadows, which are basically like, I think the shadows are originating a bit off. Like, it kind of gives the impression that the sprites are actually like floating and the shadows aren't emerging from the legs, but like they are dynamically generated, which is pretty cool. And then you have this, of course, like in the original Fallout, of course, you only had the one perspective, but here you can just like, you can scroll it around, and I've edited it so that it has that old school Fallout 30 degrees yaw perspective, but you can look at it from any direction, and you can also zoom out and in with the mouse wheel, but it's really slow now for some reason, I don't know why. There you go, you can zoom in and you can zoom out, and as you can see, we we have this placeholder enclave soldier sprite, which is not just all the walking frames aren't animated, which is another hurdle. But since I wasn't sure if I can actually make anything out of this, I thought animating the sprites would come last. So anyway, that's how kind of how it looks like, and we can also do some of this. We can also edit the pitch a bit too. Not too much because it would break the isometric illusion, but we can do this, and then we can look straight down, which kinda, with the tree it works because the tree is three-dimensional, but the sprite work for the character obviously isn't, so it looks kind of weird. But I think in Van Buren, the cancelled Fallout 3 game, they were supposed to have one of these overhead views as well as the classic this kind of view. Right, so far so good. And then you have the user interface down there. It's just a placeholder so far, except the punch, kick, and action point texts are actually dynamically generated, so we can change those. And also the health points and armor class are actually represent what is actually happening in the game. So that also works. But I haven't done anything else with the user interface yet. So a big feature of the Fallout engine is it's hex based, and obviously, like, RPG Maker is grid based, so that's one of the problems, but it's not such a big problem. What's worse is that in RPG Maker games you usually use the character directly. You move the character directly, you move it next to objects you want to interact with, and then you hit the use key. So you need to be next to the event to make anything happen. And RPG Maker MV added mouse support, but it's very rudimentary. It just basically allows you to click the screen and the character will move in that direction. But in Fallout you have this red mouse cursor that actually lets you use the mouse and quite like clearly pinpoint where you want the character to go. It's not that accurate in RPG Maker, especially since I added this MV3D plugin, because that obviously translates the grid-based coordinates into isometric 3D coordinates, and that's where the game engine kind of loses it. It's still thinking in the grid-based coordinates in the background when you click on things, but things aren't where the engine thinks they are, and that sort of caused problems. So I had to do this thing where this mouse cursor is actually an event. Now, event is an RPG Maker slang term. It has its own terminology. Basically, all the sprites are events. They're called events. So the player is an event, and the tree is an event, and also the mouse cursor is an event. So it listens to the mouse movement, and then I can click on things, and the game now directs the player to the cursor event, which accurately gives like a correct path. The problem with this is that it's very clunky. It moves quite slowly. In the original Fallout games you can move quickly with the mouse, but in this it's like it's really slow, since the game is moving this event one frame by frame in the grid, and it's like it's not an actual mouse cursor, it's just the event being moved. Another problem is that since I'm, for an example, using several monitors here, the actual mouse cursor tends to escape the game window. The game window isn't like capturing the mouse, like locking it as most other games do. So the mouse cursor can escape the game window, and then when you click on the cursor, it just clicks out of the window, which is quite annoying. And I haven't found any way to like actually lock the mouse in the full screen view, which sucks. But in any way, in any case, so far this looks kind of okay, and we have the basic menu. I haven't done anything else here. Like this guy doesn't look very Fallouty or anything, and his name is just Fighter and so on. But I managed to use the classic old Fallout font, so it gives it that nice nice look, I think. Anyway, now we have visited the coastline, and here you can see again it's quite hard to maneuver to the exit grid. It's like it's not easy. Okay, here we go, here's the exit grid, so we can go there, and we're back to the world map. So all that works mostly, and you have the exploration going on here, although like this thing is also just a placeholder. It doesn't work, but I'm sure it could be made to work with all the user interface plugins. The thing is, like, the basic RPG Maker experiences is quite limited, but then you can customize it by using plugins, and the good thing is that there's a good like so there's a bug there. For some reason it didn't trace the whole movement there for some reason. I don't know why, but anyway, there's a lot of different plugins, and people are making them on their spare time, and they're mostly free, and they're mostly quite well done. The problem with plugins is that, as they are made by people on their spare time, they might not work in the way you intended them to, and they might also not work well together. They might be incompatible. Some might be more or less complicated than others, and so on. But as you like start adding features into your game, you typically get a lot of plugins, and they might cause like some sort of compatibility problems, and they might also cause lag in the game. And this I've discovered seems to be like where I've hit a wall here. Like here on the world map, things are still working quite fine, except for some reason it just does not remove all the grids. I mean, it's removing some of the grids, but then long stretches of movement there and the grids aren't removed. Well, that's a bug to squash if we ever get around to it. But we're trying to find here the town of Shady Sands, which is one of the first locations you get to in the original Fallout game, and that is a location I tried to do in the engine, in the MV3D engine, because it's quite simple. It's just a couple of houses in the desert. Let's see if we can actually find it here in the desert. It's not that easy. Okay, finally here it is. I'm pretty sure this is Shady Sands. Now let's see if we can actually enter it. Or right, so here we have this mock-up of what Shady Sands might look like. You have the town greeters there, which are obviously ripped from Fallout 1, the graphics, and then the rest is default RPG Maker graphics that I use to make the town walls and stuff like that. And you can see the dynamic shadows, which is actually like the MV3D plugin comes into two versions. One of them costs and the other one is free, and the version that costs gives you these beautiful dynamic shadows, and it looks kind of cool. Looks kind of cool, I think. Of course, here's another problem. Now that I've moved the camera to a different viewing perspective, the event that's moving the player actually also starts moving in relation to the camera and not in relation to me, the viewer. So I'd actually have to transform all the camera, I mean the cursor movements, differently based on the perspective that's been selected. Otherwise it starts, instead of moving down, it goes up and stuff like that. So that's another problem with this event-based cursor, and I really wish I could just get a mouse system here that works. Now this is some of the 3D advanced 3D capabilities of the MV3D plugin. I tried to make the central, whatever it is, obelisk of inscriptions that stands in the middle of the Shady Sands town square, and obviously the chests are from RPG Maker, and the other graphics, like these, aren't Fallout type graphics at all, but already you can kind of see it's kind of starting to stutter and lag, and this is a problem. This is the biggest problem I've had with this thing. Like it just seems kind of slow. Now let's go to the but here it's still quite manageable, but let's go to the other side of Shady Sands. Now here it just gets really slow for some reason, and I don't quite understand it. You can see some of the peasants here, and I made the made the crops grow here and stuff like that. You can also see I tried to shape one of those rocks that make up the posts for the city wall a bit differently. It doesn't look very good, but these are just graphical things, and they can be fixed and should be fixed. Now here I tried to do one of these buildings properly, like this is one of the town buildings of Shady Sands, and you can actually see that you can enter it. Now here another problem that I faced was that the event-based cursor isn't visible through the buildings, because you can't make it visible through walls. So I had to make this giant cursor that pokes out of the roof of the building, and that way you can see where you're trying to click. But now it's just very, very slow, and I'm not quite sure why. So anyway, we go inside the building, and it has that roof that disappears like in Fallout. I'm quite proud of that. But the problem here again is that in Fallout you can see also through the wall, like it creates this bubble of visibility through the wall around the player, and here you can't have that. So the player is just barely visible, like over the wall here. Like here then of course you can start using these camera controls to get a better view of what's happening inside the building and stuff like that, but again it's so slow. I don't know why. Because I was thinking like maybe it's because I'm using too many of these plugins and that causes the lag. But like I can't pinpoint any one plugin that's causing it, and in the previous scene it was quite fast, I think. So now I'm left wondering what is it that causes it. Then in Fallout you also have this other cursor. You have two different modes for the mouse cursor. One is for movement and the other is for interaction with the game world. And this is one of the problems of making a Fallout type game in RPG Maker, because like I said, in RPG Maker the player needs to close the distance, but in Fallout you need to be able to interact with that guy, for an example, there in the distance, for an example, to examine him and look what it is, and also then when combat gets like implemented, you get to shoot him from a distance. So you can't just have the player walking up to everything he wants to interact with. Now this other Enclave dude is one character where I have actually done some of this functionality, so it actually works. And now if only I could get this painfully slow cursor to actually hit him. Like this is obviously unacceptable, and this is like where I'm kind of hitting a wall here. Like obviously this is unplayable, so I can't really like continue development with the game being as slow as this. Like you can see, this is what the map looks like in the 2D map editor view, and it's not a very complicated map. It's just like it's a couple of buildings and a couple of events representing, like here's the moo cows, the Brahmin, and here's some crops, and then you have the peasants here. It's a town composed mostly of farmers, but I do have this guy, and this guy uses like no, it's not a parallel event either. It's an auto-run event, and it's only triggered by, it should only be triggered by certain things. So we can try and delete this guy and see what happens. Like, do we get any increase in performance here? No, it's still slow as heck. Yeah, well, anyway, that's my biggest problem at this point, because like I really don't know how to fix this. And if it's just like a feature of the engine that it gets this slow, well then there's no use developing this any further, because it's obviously unplayable. Like, the game performance seems to significantly improve only when I remove all the peasants from standing around, which is just kind of weird. And I think it is the events, because like here you have the map with almost all events deleted, and you can see it works quite smoothly. But it is kind of silly, because like, yeah, you can have these nice looking maps, but like without the events populating these maps, it's not gonna be much of an RPG now, is it? It's going to be more of a scenery tour. It does give a very post-apocalyptic feeling though, without any people around, but I don't think that's what we're looking for here. So yeah, it is a kind of a weird thing. Now I added some of the events back in here to showcase them a bit. Now this part I'm also kind of proud of. Many might recognize it as the town well of Shady Sands, but like where it comes from is kind of neat. It's actually in fully 3D, and the cool thing about MV3D is that you can add your own 3D models into them in the OBJ format. And where this is from the cancelled Fallout 3 called Van Buren by its code name. And its assets are actually floating around online, and you can have them in several formats. I think it's 3D Studio Max and Blender, and I have Blender. It's a free software, so I use that to export it into an OBJ, and that's how you can actually have the original Fallout Van Buren assets working in RPG Maker, which is something I never would have guessed could happen. And obviously it's missing textures. The Blender file didn't seem to have the textures configured, and I guess I'd have to like manually reinsert the textures in the Blender file and then export it into an OBJ, and then it might work with the textures in game. I don't know, I haven't actually gotten that far yet, but I mean, just seeing this is kind of something like that really inspires me, because if this would work in a large scale, you could also make all of the cities, all of the town maps, everything in fully 3D using the original Fallout Van Buren assets. So nothing would actually stop you from making a proper Fallout Van Buren using RPG Maker, and that is kind of the thing that inspired me here. But it does seem that like as complexity increases in the RPG Maker engine, it just gets painfully slow, and to the point where it's just unusable. Now here we have this guy, and I can actually now move the cursor like without too much pain, so we can actually just take a look at this guy, and we can also use the talk screen, and then it walks to the character as he does in the games, and then you have this dialogue screen type thing, and you can do some talking, and you can have dialogue trees and that kind of stuff, and quite advanced dialogue things, and you could also put in skill checks and stuff like that here, like in the classic games. And now that we were mouthing off to the soldier, we'd get like a combat situation, but obviously I haven't done anything with the combat yet, because like even the basic functionality doesn't work that well. But I don't know. It's like, it feels like there's so much potential here with the custom assets, with the 3D engine and everything, and it looks so nice here when there's no events around like populating this world. It's smooth, and you get these nice shadows and everything, and the isometric Fallout sprites, even though they are quite pixelated, I think they do fit into this world quite nicely with the way it updates as the camera turns. Like, I don't know, I think you could have something in here, but like I guess you'd need to be some sort of a genius to optimize the engine and all the plugins and stuff like that, and unfortunately that's not me. I only know how to put these things together. I don't know anything about coding per se. I can't like optimize any of the code. So I don't know. It's another game project stuck in development hell. But like, I think there's something here. If anyone wants to help me with this or offer some advice, I'm all ears. And once again, here you can see the actual map. So it's not complicated at all. Like, it's just basically a bunch of squares, which is basically what all Fallout, like the original Fallout maps are. They're just squares on an equal plane. They don't even have that much like height differences, which this engine can do. It can do height differences. So you could even have like big skyscrapers and stuff like that in ruined cities. And once again, if you could use the original like Van Buren assets, you could have like entire ruined cities using this engine. But like, annoying. Anyway, I think that's that for today's episode of Devil's Helvety, which is development hell, and you've been stuck here with me in the development hell of a Fallout clone, much as its predecessor, the original Van Buren. It will probably never be released, but at least it's documented here on this channel for now. Anyway, I'll see you once again in some other episode. Bye now.